ਲੋਕ ਰਾਜ ਦਾ ਇਹੋ ਹੀ ਗਿਫਟ ਵੱਡਾ ਹੱਕ ਵੋਟ ਦਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਏ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਾਇਆ ਭੋਗ ਰਾਜੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਉੱਚਾ ਚੁੱਕਿਆ ਗੁਲਾਮ ਵਿਚਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਮ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਉਣ ਦਾ ਚਾਅ ਚੜਿਆ ਜੋਸ਼ ਬਖਸ਼ਿਆ ਮੁਕੱਦਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਹਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਹੀ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜੋੜ ਜੇ ਦਿਓ ਮੌਕਾ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਤੋੜ ਸਕੂੰਗੀ ਅਰਸ਼ ਦੇ ਤਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ। ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਏਸ਼ੀਆ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਦੇਖਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਹੋਸਟ ਰਾਜਵੀਰ ਜੌਹਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਅੱਜ ਜੋ ਸ਼ਖਸੀਅਤ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ 'ਚ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਇੰਟਰੋਡਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਮੁਹਤਾਜ ਨਹੀਂ। ਐਕਸ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਸਟਾਰ ਅਵਾਰਡ ਵਿਨਿੰਗ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟ ਪੁਆਇੰਟਰ ਦੇ CEO ਨਨ ਅਦਰ ਦੈਨ ਸੈਨ ਗਰੇਵਾਲ ਜੀ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜਾਣਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟ ਉਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਨੇ। ਅ ਵੈਰੀ ਵਾਰਮ welcome, Mr. Sen Grewal.
Thanks so much.
As a journalist, you have a lot of experience. So how do you see these 2019 elections are different from 2015?
Well, I think that in 2015, you had quite a long period of a party in power with Prime Minister Stephen Harper and the Conservatives, and there was definitely an appetite for change. It seemed like more of a change election. A lot of conservative policies had started to wear on many Canadians, and just the idea that, you know, people wanted to see a fresh face. And Mr. Trudeau at the time, obviously being almost like a novelty candidate, he had a celebrity status. His father, the former Prime Minister that many Canadians believe is one of the greatest Prime Ministers ever. So I think that between his personality and the fact that we were coming out of a long period of conservative governance, there was really this appetite to move on. Now, the Liberals and Mr. Trudeau, they've only had 4 years, one term, but because of things like SNC-Lavalin and the way that people like Jody Wilson-Raybould were treated in that entire affair, you know, more recently the issue with the blackface and brownface scandal surrounding Mr. Trudeau, I think it's become more of an election that's about Mr. Trudeau's character, him personally as a leader and whether he's fit to lead. And so it's more almost a trial, if you will, of Mr. Trudeau. I think that's unfortunate. I think there's many other broad issues that we should be focusing on. I think at the local level in Brampton, Mississauga, across the 905, we should really be looking at policy issues about what's desperately needed in these high growth communities, high immigrant communities. Infrastructure is needed. We need better roads. We need more funding for healthcare. We need to address crime. So I think it's a bit unfortunate that things seem to be caught up in more of this personality debate.
As a journalist, what's your point of view of current polling in Peel region?
It is interesting. The polling, so the national polls have the two parties pretty much neck and neck. They're both at about 34%. So it's like a dead heat. In Peel, of the 11 ridings in Brampton and Mississauga, Caledon's quite safely conservative, but Brampton and Mississauga, 6 ridings in Mississauga, 5 in Brampton. Only 2 right now seem to be up for grabs. Mississauga Streetsville and Mississauga Lakeshore. Those seem to be a dead heat, very even, but the other 9 are either comfortably in Liberal hands or somewhat comfortably. There's either, 6-7% leads or as much as 20-25% leads in the other 9. But those 2 are interesting. Mississauga Streetsville, Mississauga Lakeshore. Mississauga Streetsville, you've got Gagan Sikand running for the Liberals as the incumbent, but he's facing a stiff challenge, dead heat, with Conservative Gada Melek. And in Mississauga Lakeshore, Sven Svegman, the incumbent Liberal, is in a dead heat, very close race with Stella Ambler. And those 2 had flip-flopped last time. Stella Ambler had been the incumbent. Svegman, as the challenger, knocked her off in 2015. So it's a rematch, and it's, like I said, it's a dead heat.
Key ridings in the region that could swing, and where do you see the parties are standing now?
In terms of swing ridings, the 2 that I just mentioned, Mississauga Streetsville, Mississauga Lakeshore, certain ridings are tightening up. Kamal Kara, I see her lead narrowing. Muraralal Tapilal has made a lot of gains on her. I could see Maninder Sidhu perhaps having, a bit of a difficulty. He obviously wasn't the incumbent. Brampton East had been won by Raj Grewal for the Liberals.
Yes.
Raj Grewal was removed from the party. Mr. Sidhu got the nomination, but now when I look at the numbers, I think, he could be in trouble if he doesn't run a good campaign these last 3 weeks. Other candidates like Sonia Sidhu, she needs to run a good election because her opponent's, within striking distance. And Ruby Sahota and Arpan Khanna, I think that's an interesting race. Mr. Khanna's running a strong campaign. The Conservatives are putting a lot of money to try to take down Ruby Sahota. And Arpan Khanna, despite a social media hiccup, an old post that was exposed, he seems to have recovered from that. So that one seems interesting. But I think Kamal Khera and Ramesh Sangha as well. Ramesh Sangha, to me, looking at the numbers, he might be in jeopardy of losing his seat if he doesn't run a good campaign these last 3 weeks. And Kamal Khera and Ramesh Sangha, there's a lot of feeling out in the community that we hear at the Pointer that they have not really done a lot of work, and they haven't done a very good job for their constituents, for their ridings. They have not been particularly responsive. They went off on the India trip last year. They didn't have anything to show for it. They've been asked what they've done for Brampton, infrastructure, healthcare funding, tough on crime. They're not really very responsive. There's a question mark over those two, Ramesh Sangha, Kamal Khera. And to a lesser extent, I think even Sonia Sidhu, she really needs to get on the record to explain what exactly has she done for Brampton. What exactly has she brought for her city if she wants to get reelected? She's ahead in the polls, but I think constituents are getting tired of supporting candidates. They come and ask for their votes. They bring the party leader during the election time. Yet in between those 4 years, we don't really hear much from them. We're not quite sure what they're doing. They obviously deal with, constituency issues, particularly around immigration applications. But let's get realistic. You don't need an MP to handle immigration applications. Yeah, they might have to help with some of them. Yes, they can advocate for certain families. They can do certain things that, their constituents expect of them. But I think in this day and age, they need to be doing a lot more than that to make the lives of their residents much better.
As a journalist, you have a very keen observation. You're talking about the social media conflict or Cold War. How you see all the scenario?
The social media posts and unearthing all of these old posts on social media, things that have been written, put up on social media by, people who later on become candidates. So again, Arpan Khanna, right? The post in question was something that appeared to have been written by a friend of his. He reposts it 9 years ago in 2010. It includes a homophobic slur. Clearly he shouldn't have done it. He said that he was a student at that time. And I don't see a lot of voters in this day and age putting a lot of stock into those things. I don't, particularly in Brampton, Mississauga, you've got a lot of immigrant, residents and voters. They're very savvy. They want to know about the issues. They've got important things that they're dealing with in their everyday lives. They want their lives to be better. They have employment issues, immigration issues. There's healthcare issues, crime. So the social media mudslinging and things that come up from the past, the Pointer, when we go out and speak to voters, most of them in Brampton, Mississauga tell us it's not a big concern of theirs. They weren't concerned about Mr. Trudeau's brown face and blackface use in the past. We spoke to dozens of voters in the two cities, and overwhelmingly they said it wasn't an issue for them.
What do you think? Like, it's a countdown for 2019 elections. Which party is, successful to win the hearts of people?
It's tough for me as a journalist because I have to be objective. I do think the Liberals have a lot of really good policies that, if enacted, if actually sort of acted upon, they're going to be really beneficial. Like, for example, the $188 billion infrastructure plan, the Invest in Canada plan that the Liberals have, about $128 billion was already in place from the previous Conservatives prior to 2015 under Prime Minister Harper, but the Liberals added an additional $60 billion onto that. So this $188 billion fund for cities that can help build transit, light rail, it can go towards capital projects for things like healthcare, hospitals, roads, other infrastructure. I really like that idea, but the question is, why haven't we seen that money flowing? Mr. Trudeau and the Liberals at the federal level got into a little bit of a war with Doug Ford and the Ontario PCs, claiming that it was the Ford provincial government in Ontario that wasn't releasing that infrastructure funding. The Ford government turned around and said, no, it's the Liberal government who haven't really been very well organized, and they haven't been getting that money to flow. So in terms of these questions about, which party has the best ideas, certainly on that infrastructure level, I really like what the Liberals stand for. In terms of a lot of social policy, I obviously agree with the Green Party in terms of climate change. I think we need to grasp that. I think the South Asian community, the Punjabi community, I think they need to start understanding that climate change, it needs to become an issue. Oftentimes we see the young members of the Punjabi community, the children and the students, having to educate their parents and their grandparents who don't really get concerned about it. You grow up in Punjab, you don't think about it. Things like pollution and whatnot,
yes,
even though it surrounds them,
yes,
they don't make it a priority. Why?
Yes.
But here, that doesn't fly.
Yes.
The young people,
Yes,
they want action.
So you're talking about the party policies.
Yeah, and I think the Conservatives, they should be given a fair amount of credit as well. I think that their proposed changes to the RESP contribution, so this is the Registered Education Savings Plan for your children, if they're going to go on to post-secondary education, college or university, they have proposed that they will increase the government's contribution from right now. If you put every year $2,500 towards each of your children under 18, right now you'll get a matching funding from the federal government of $500. The Conservatives have proposed to increase that to $750. So you put in $2,500. Mr. Scheer is proposing that he will increase by $250 the amount that the government will contribute. So you get a total of $750 every year for your children under 18. I think that's something that's really good. If you want to prepare for your children's education, this is a great way to start doing it. I think the Conservative plan to reinstate some of the tax credits for your children's activities, sports and other activities, certain types of arts activities, like I said, sports, whatnot, that's a good move. It saves parents and families, money in their pockets if they want their children to be healthy or, engaged in other types of activities. Yeah, so I think that, these are the policies that for those voters who feel that those sorts of things are really important to them, the parties are definitely offering real solutions to help voters that align with their thinking.
Right. NDP said everything free, like paying with your health card, not credit card. So how do you see all this?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the NDP, again, I really like all the policies, many of the policies, I should say, many of the things that they've proposed. Mr. Singh, Jagmeet Singh, as the NDP party leader, I think he's on the right page. I think, philosophically, ideologically, he's doing the types of things and saying the types of things that a lot of voters, it really resonates with voters, again, who align with his values, the NDP's values. But the problem, and the Parliamentary Budget Office and other economists and other people who've analyzed his numbers, the problem is, how do you propose, you say you're going to do these things and you're going to act on these words, but in order to do that, you have to cost it out. There has to be money. So, free transit, in certain parts of the country, tuition that's going to be covered, all of these other, plans to offer these things to the public, which sound great, they cost a lot of money. And it's a similar situation, down in the United States where you've got certain left of the spectrum, the political spectrum, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, trying to get the Democratic nomination in the States, and everyone's asking, who's going to pay for all your ideas, all these giveaways? That's the big question of Elizabeth May with the Greens and Jagmeet Singh of the NDP. He hasn't done a very good job, taking a pen and line by line showing Canadians that he can cost out all of the things he's claiming that he's going to give to them.
Yes. Mr. Grewal, to balance the budget is also a big issue. Yeah. So Liberals don't have any plan for that, but Conservatives say within a 5 year we're going to do that. How do you see all this? Which party carry the best policy to budget the balance?
Right, but let's be clear about something. balanced budgets, for governments is not really that big of a deal. In fact, some of what the Liberals have said about, maybe not needing to balance the federal budget makes a lot of sense. If you've got a really low interest rate environment and you can pay for capital costs infrastructure at such a low rate of interest by borrowing to pay for these things that people are going to use over their lifetimes, and the cost to finance that is so low, it makes sense to borrow. It's okay to run a deficit. But in terms of letting it get out of control, we know that federally, the federal government is in a better position in terms of its deficit. Economists have said the federal government has tons of room. It's not even close to getting to a point where its deficit is dangerous. Now, the province of Ontario, on the other hand, that's running about a $330 billion deficit on its own, it's getting to the point where the deficit's becoming a real challenge. Sorry, it's a $330 billion debt. But the deficit, the interest to pay off that debt every year, just your debt payments, your interest payments, it's really hurting Ontario. The federal government's not there yet, and if it makes sense, which party is sort of looking at, a little bit of spending can be a good thing. And I'm going to say this again, I like the Liberal approach to say, hey, let's put $188 billion of infrastructure funding into the country, because that is an investment. The jobs you create, all of that infrastructure creates stimulation in the economy. Like I said, it employs people, generates federal income tax, all kinds of other revenue that comes in. So the question is, are you using your debt, are you using the deficit in a smart way to stimulate the economy? Are you taking advantage of low borrowing rates? The Conservatives, I think, tend to be, overly fearful, and I think that's just their spin to the public, because the fact is, I'll give you an example, not to go on with this too much. You want to build an addition to your house, right? If you can borrow the money at 2.5% to build an addition for your house, right? Is it better to borrow the money at such a cheap amount and then pay it off pretty quickly, or I'm going to save that money for 10 years in my pocket, and only when I have saved enough money will I make the addition? Well, you know what? That money that you were going and saving, you could have used it for all kinds of other things, because to borrow it was so cheap.
Right.
And that's where I think the Conservative sort of position on that quite often is more public perception.
Do you think Doug Ford education cuts pays Conservative Party like their vote bank?
Oh yeah, I think what Doug Ford has done already, in a little over a year, while he was elected in June of 2018, so in a little over a year, the damage that he's done in Ontario, that's the number one thing that the pointer hears from voters. We send our reporters out to talk to voters, to speak to them on the streets, to speak to them in other places out in Brampton and Mississauga. And the number one thing that we hear is, we don't want another Doug Ford in the federal government. We don't need someone who is going to just cut and burn and cut, social services, things like public education. A lot of things that Ford never told voters about when he was trying to get their votes. It would have been one thing if Ford had said, if you vote for me, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Well, he never mentioned that, but then he got in with the majority government. He starts doing these things that he never said he was going to do, and the public is really upset. If I would think anyone who has children in the public education system in Ontario is really concerned about what the Doug Ford government is doing. And that's no doubt, it's hurting Andrew Scheer.
Right. People's Party of Canada is really clear on no mass immigration. How do you see their policies, and which party is best for immigration, according to you?
Yeah, well, okay, let's be clear. The People's Party of Canada, Maxime Bernier's party, Maxime Bernier, who came within a hair of becoming the Conservative leader. Remember, he beat, Andrew Scheer beat him on the 13th round. They were pretty much neck and neck. So Bernier could very well be, the Conservative candidate right now. But his position now, since he started the People's Party of Canada, their platform on immigration isn't no immigration. So the Conservatives under Harper had the target at around 260,000 immigrants a year. Bernier has proposed bringing it down to about 150. The Liberals went the other way. The Liberals, after they took power, set the target for, I believe, 2021. It's going to reach 350,000. So the Liberals took it about 90,000 above what the Harper government had. Bernier is proposing it to take a little more than 100,000 below what the Harper Conservatives had it at. But the key thing is that Bernier wants to pretty much eliminate the family reunification and a lot of the refugee categories. He wants it to be almost all economic immigration. So if you have a skill, if you have education to go and work in a particular industry, if you can come over on economic grounds, he's all for that. Family reunification, amnesty programs, refugee, those sorts of things. Bernier is not very keen on that. He doesn't see how that contributes to the economy and the well-being of the country as a whole.
To control gun violence is a major issue. Yeah. Which party policies are good for that?
I like what the Liberals have announced with their proposal to ban assault-style rifles, like the AR-15, these semi-automatic rifles that can fire, 700 to 900 bullets in a minute. No one needs to own a weapon that can fire 700, 800, 900 bullets in 1 minute.
Right.
So their move to say that we're going to ban all of those, I really like that. I also really like, the NDP deserves a lot of credit. The NDP has stated very clearly, and Jagmeet Singh has supported his party's pledge on this, that they would allow municipalities, so cities, so Brampton and Mississauga, they working with their police force, Peel Police Service, they could determine if they want to ban handguns. So even the smaller handguns, especially the semi-automatic handguns, which again, they can fire hundreds of bullets in a minute, 30 bullets in about 3 seconds, these handguns.
Right.
So the NDP have said that they will let municipalities decide if they want to ban those. The Liberals have now also said they would explore and allow municipalities to ban those handguns. Again, I think that's very important in a place like Mississauga, Brampton, where these things are getting out of control.
Thank you so much, Mr. Grewal, for being with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
ईसन सैन गरेवाल जी फिर तो एक वक्री शख्सियत दे नाल तुहाडे सामने रूबरू होवांगे। जोश जज्बा हर मैदान फतेह देखते रहना प्राइम एशिया टीवी, तुहाडा अपना तुहाडे ਲਈ।